Welcome to How Did You Do It? Our space to get to know the people behind great ideas.
Whether you're on your morning walk, heading to work, or relaxing at home, enjoy. Your daily dose of inspiration awaits. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to How Did You Do It? How are you today, Gabby?
I am good. It's actually quite a gloomy Tuesday, which has sent me sad, but getting through it, no complaints. Today, we're so excited to be joined with a super guest.
Yeah, we spoke to David, co-founder of Button Support Services.
It was a fantastic episode, so of course all information regarding Buttons will be linked in our description if you want to check it out or get involved.
And as always, put in your earphones, go for a walk and enjoy.
Enjoy, guys! Hello, David, and welcome onto the podcast. We're so excited to have you. To get right into it, we'll do a bit of a quick fire, get to know you. So you're based in Melbourne, so I'm sure you're a bit of a coffee connoisseur. What's your coffee order?
A strong oat latte. If the weather's nice, we'll make it iced. But yeah, that's pretty standard stuff.
Lovely. And do you have any morning rituals?
Out of lockdown, I did. I'm a hopeless reader. I'm really bad at reading. So every morning I try to go to the office, read a little bit. But since lockdown, that's out of the window. So just been trying to go for a walk every morning with a friend over a coffee. I think it's just a good schedule and routine to keep while things are a little bit bland, yeah. So it's definitely worked well.
Beautiful. And do you have a favourite hobby?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I actually asked this question to all of our workers, and I always feel bad because it's an uncomfortable question, but I actually like doing quizzes. It's a bit of a nuanced one, but I like doing quizzes, especially general knowledge ones. We started it in school, and that was like 6 years ago, and there's a group of us that still do it most weeks over coffee or over Zoom now, and even on the weekend. So that's that's a good one.
What were your sorts of interests growing up?
I was big into sport. When I was actually quite young, I was a little bit theatrical. I loved singing and dancing. I had an older sister that definitely facilitated a lot of that. But as I grew up a little bit, life really did revolve around a bit of sport. But I think as you grow up, you start to figure out different habits. But sport's definitely one that's kind of stayed pretty true since I was a kid.
Very nice. And what did you do after high school? What have been your experiences since high school?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to go to Israel on a gap year program. I did that with a good group of friends and loved it. It was I was there for about 7 or 8 months and really fortunate to be able to do that. Had been to Israel before, but that was a completely different experience and a different dynamic. And kind of the first opportunity to live away from home independently. It was a really fun time and a good learning experience. And then since then, still done a bit of traveling, jumped into university, doing a commerce degree at Monash, which isn't too exciting. It's a little bit boring. But yeah, a bit of traveling after I finished school.
Lovely. Israel would be beautiful. I've always wanted to go there. That sounds gorgeous.
Yeah.
Before we get into the Buttons story, for anyone who may be unaware, what does Buttons actually do?
Awesome. Yeah. So Buttons Support Service is a company that match makes people with a disability to support workers in a thoughtful and meaningful way. And support workers are individuals that assist someone with a disability with their daily activities and social engagement and community participation. It's got a really varied and diverse role. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's what we do. Amazing.
We're so excited to hear more about it. But to get into that, what initially drew you into that space?
Another experience after I finished school, I was fortunate enough to go on a program with an organisation called Flying Fox, which is a non-for-profit in Melbourne, and they run camps and social opportunities for kids and young adults with special needs. And I went there after I finished year 12. I did it with a school friend who's now is my business partner, and it was something that we went on for social reasons. We thought it would be a lot of fun, but it completely changed our lives and the trajectory of what we were going to do. It became our happy place. We ended up actually then transitioning to staff members there with Flying Fox, which was really lucky, great professional experience. So I had 3 or 4 years in the disability sector in different capacities as a support worker, working for a non-for-profit as a volunteer. And it was an industry that I felt like that I could contribute to, selfishly learn a lot about myself. The camps and the work that I was doing became something in which, and really enriched my life. was something that was very fruitful. I learned a lot about myself, but most importantly, it was a lot of fun. So it was just an industry that I kind of fell into and haven't found a reason to leave yet. It's definitely something that I'm very, very, very passionate about to this day.
And how did you go from being in a space that you love and knowing that the non-for-profit is really for you, and then developing the actual idea for Buttons Support Services?
Yeah, it's a good question. Flying Fox is a youth-run organisation, so their staff members are really young, the volunteers are young, so there's a bit of a high turnover. And Ryan, who I referenced before, who was my high school friend and business partner, we were coming to the end of our time at Flying Fox. And then I guess you're confronted with, what to do when your professional career. Should we do something in the commerce field? Should we apply for accounting jobs or whatever it is? And I think we were both like, why don't we just figure out a way to stay involved? And there was a catalyst for why we started Buttons. Was a lot of young people that we were seeing were getting involved in the support work business, which was something new. Maybe support work in the disability sector was an older dominated demographic with like a clinical and medical feel. And young people were coming in and presenting something really, really new. So we took notice of that and thought, we haven't developed a full business around it. We're like, that's something really interesting and cool and a niche part of the market that's probably untapped. Let's figure out a way that we can create a service around that and make it impactful and help workers and help families and people with a disability. So it wasn't too much of a conscious decision to answer your question. It was kind of like, we were still involved. We saw something cool as an opportunity. Let's kind of just explore it a little bit. I think as young people, we had that opportunity. We weren't living out of home and having bills to pay. We still were quite, young and confident, and maybe didn't really know what we were doing, and maybe we still don't. But it wasn't too much of a conscious choice. We kind of just went into it.
You had this idea and you recognized that it was like the right place and time to potentially attempt to make it a reality. What were the first steps?
Yeah, a bit of market research. We did a lot of interviews with workers that we knew in our community, in the Flying Fox community, and just asked them as many questions as we can, and just figured out like, what do they really enjoy? What are the gaps? Where could we potentially see ourselves creating a service around? That was the first step, because in our head we had an idea, but you do have to validate that with the market. So after we validated in the sense that there were workers, young people going in, but there were gaps in the way that they were conducting their work, we then just did a lot of planning around, okay, with that information, how can we then create a sustainable and really impactful service? And after that, then you do the fun things around a name and the logo, and then registration. It was a lot of learning, like we hadn't started anything before, so it was all completely new. But just validate what the market is really telling you. I think that was the first step. And then you just kind of go into it and see what you can do.
Yeah, awesome. A lot of people with a disability, it's often like very vulnerable members of the community and so forth. So it takes a lot of trust for parents of disabled people and so forth to put their child or significant person in their life in the care of support services. How did you go about making Buttons a credible support service?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something that we strive towards, still to this day. You need to make sure that the families and people with a disability are receiving the support that they need and deserve. They've often been really neglected from society historically, haven't had access to, good providers and good people in their lives. And with the introduction with the NDIS and the new funding, more providers have come on because they see it as an opportunity to make a quick buck. So there's actually a lack of quality there right now because there's just so many players. But we came in and just kept our focus really, really clear. Make sure that support workers are enjoying our service and make sure that families are enjoying our service as well. If you can do that through trial and error and having open communication with both parties, making yourself accessible to everyone when there's issues, and trying your best and treating people really well, you'll find your way and you'll create a service that people actually want to come back to. So since inception for the past 20 months or so, our focus has really been that. We haven't explored, many other services and other things that we can offer. It's like, do families and do workers appreciate our service? And do they leave and stay involved with the positive things to say about Buttons? And if you do that and that's your focus, I think you can figure out a way to, create credibility and actually create a service that's valuable and needed. So I think it's about focus and being open to change and not being attached to your ideas around how the service should look. Being flexible with what the market's telling you. I think that's also, really critical.
Yeah, it's clear that you have this focus on the people involved. But both people who utilise the support services and people involved in providing that support. So I guess in many ways that would differentiate your agency from a lot of other support services out there. But going beyond that, like, what other things differentiate your agency?
Well, first, we've got a huge lean towards young support workers, which is something new, and I touched on it before. Young people haven't always been involved in the disability sector, but young people as workers present something really exciting. They can come into a family and into a person with a disability's life, and be someone that's appropriate and can build an authentic relationship with, and someone that's fun and they look forward to seeing. So we've got a really heavy lean towards bringing young people in, and a byproduct of that is that you create a more inclusive society, because our workers are mainly part-time university students, and they might not stay within our community for 10 years and make that their professional career, but they go into their lives and go back into their household or their new businesses or their new workplaces, being more inclusive members of society, and treat people in a better way. So that's one angle, is the young people. Another angle is the way we matchmake. So a lot of other providers in the sector do a really good job. We're not here to say otherwise, but their matchmaking is a little bit clinical, like I said before, and it's almost just to churn out matches, just like get them out quick. We take a lot of pride in who we matchmake, and our process is a bit more curated, in the sense that we meet families, we get to know them really well. What's the supports they need? What's the energy of the individual they're looking for? And simultaneously, we meet workers as well and find out what they're comfortable with, what's their skill set, what's challenging for them. And then we conduct matches in a way that lasts a bit longer, because you're bringing in people that, will be a part of their lives for a much more sustainable period. And we're of the belief that if the family's happy and the person with the disability is happy, and so is the worker, and they feel comfortable and confident within the relationship, it'll be fruitful. It'll be really self-sufficient. They'll want to see each other. They'll make time. They'll make their schedule flexible to see each other. So that's the matchmaking part. And lastly, probably we do support our workers a little bit more. I think they're often neglected. And like I touched on it before, just briefly, if the workers feel better about their role, then the work will naturally be better. So if we can do a really good job in putting them in positions where they can thrive and putting them into roles that they're excited for and like don't really consider it work, but something that they look forward to and whatnot, the work will be better, and the person who's receiving that work will actually get a better service, because their worker is, naturally just a better fit. So, those are a couple of things that probably do differentiate ourselves.
Yeah, lovely. I'd love to know what year Buttons actually launched.
We started in Jan 2020, so and started getting the ball rolling in Feb and March. But the official launch was January, so right before COVID. Yeah,
so I was going to say, how's COVID impacted all of that?
It's really hard to measure, just because we don't have life outside of this kind of dynamic. But we're really fortunate in the sense that disability support work is an essential service. So I feel really lucky to the fact that we do have a business to run. And I personally feel really grateful that I could start a business, one, in an industry that I'm passionate about, with a best friend as well. But the fact that we can start it and have like a good opportunity to succeed, because it's essential, especially during COVID, is amazing. Like if we started a cafe or retail, like it'd be impossible. Like we would have put in money and it's kind of just out the window. So it's been hard to measure, but fortunately we've seen growth and we've seen, impact, which has been great. I think the biggest thing that we've noticed is the chopping and changing of in lockdown and out of lockdown is the worst part, not necessarily the lockdown itself. Because if lockdown's for an extended period, then people are naturally adjusting, they're making new schedules. The uncertainty doesn't work. So when we're in lockdown 1 week and then TAFE and schools are online and then out of lockdown, so like the schedules are constantly changing. I think that has been the hardest part for workers and families too.
I wanted to just go back on a point you mentioned before in terms of supporting workers as well. We saw on your Instagram that you said your support workers were paid more than $50,000 above standard industry rates. I just wanted to know, how are you able to make that possible?
I think it's because we want to be honest. I think a lot of other providers out there have huge margins and are taking so much money out of the workers' pockets, which we think is really unfair. The workers are the ones there doing the work, rocking up, meeting new people, experiencing difficult situations. we're merely there to support and facilitate. So it's our opinion that the workers deserve a really good piece of that pie. And that's something that we're really proud of. We haven't come across an agency that does pay more than us. And I think that's something that we will hold true for, the remainder of our organisation, because it's something that was a critical piece in when we launched, that workers deserve more. They deserve way more support, more financial security. So let's give them that. And it hasn't really been a roadblock for us because it's just been a priority.
Definitely. And what's been the most rewarding part about creating button support services for you?
I touched on it before, but I feel like genuinely, like really, really grateful for the fact that I have the opportunity to launch a business. I think that comes from such a privileged place, and I recognise that. So that's one, in doing it in an industry that I feel really passionate about, and personally get a lot out of. Like, it's something that haven't steered away from for 6 years because it just meant so much to me. So then doing it with a best friend that we can go on that journey together, and there's that added element of like personal relationship and personal success has been huge. So just the foundations of having a business, and now the fact that it's growing and it's doing well, I just feel really blessed for that, because I understand that it's not a given. It's not even in all those 4 markers are hard to come by. So the fact that I've got those just starting has been, something that I feel really, really grateful for.
It's so cool to see what you guys have achieved in the past 20 months. I think especially considering like the way the world has been in the past 2 years, like it's so cool that you're able to manage to start a business that you were really proud of and that's doing like really, really awesome work. I imagine throughout that time there has been a lot of challenges to overcome too. Do you mind touching on a few of the major ones if you've had them?
I've personally found a tricky part is prioritizing what to do first. This might be something like really small and really trivial, but understanding like we've got a huge checklist of these are the 10 or 15 things we want to do. We know how to do them. The challenge is understanding which ones to do first, and then to go to this one, and then to go to this one. I often say to Ryan, who's my partner, if someone puts us in a room to figure out a problem, we could probably come to a solution, but to figure out what to do first and then what to do second and third is the hardest part. So that's a trivial one that I found tricky. Other than that, I think one thing that we've been asked a lot about is being in business with friends. It's something that people talk about. Ryan and I are really fortunate that we don't have any challenges. And I think it's because we put in the legwork at the start. Before we had any business, before we had any participants or workers, we did a lot of work on just boundaries and expectations of each other, and understanding that our personal life comes before business. I think that's held us in really good stead, because a lot of people have asked us, wow, that's great, because we didn't do that and shit's hit the fan and my personal relationship has suffered. So that's been a challenge that we've kind of always gone through, but we've been lucky in a sense that it hasn't kind of boiled over into anything, major or significant.
Definitely, and it's so important to set those boundaries when in a working relationship. Me and Gabby are the same. We're like, tonight, no podcast talk, and like
on phone calls, we're just having like a live catch up today. It's not like
it's hard.
It's really hard.
Do you have a separate like WhatsApp or message channel where it's like
not
podcast
even
stuff and then personal?
We just we try our best. I think because we both love it, it's great because we do want to talk about it a lot, but sometimes we're just like at that point where we're like, no, let's just not discuss this anymore. We need like to just switch off for a second. To flip it on its head, what has been the biggest achievements so far?
I think I mentioned at the start about wanting to make sure that people appreciate our service. That is our focus for the first 20 months, has been validated. And I think that's the biggest part. We put in a lot of work to make sure that our service really works well, the processes make sense and they're efficient, and people are actually receiving, good services. The fact that we've validated that is really, I think, hard to do, but something that we like, and now have acknowledged that we've put in the work and it's been validated. So like, tick, well done. Now it's on to the next part of what's our next challenges and what are our next goals for the next year, 2 or even 5 years. That's been the most rewarding part. I think a little thing that makes me feel good is when I receive a message from a family or a worker after the first shift, saying like, that's a good role for me. I'm really keen to go back. We love the worker. Amazing. Well done. That type of stuff like lifts me up like beyond belief. Like that's the really good stuff that I hear often, but still really special to this day. And that's what kind of keeps me motivated, validates, okay, that the processes are working, the matchmaking does indeed do the right thing. So yeah, those are the couple of things.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine that would be really impactful.
Yeah.
What does the future of Buttons look like?
It's a good question. We are looking to continually grow and expand. We are on our way of doing that. You just have to make sure that your quality remains the same throughout that, because otherwise people aren't going to be happy with your service and people will go elsewhere and go to a better provider, which is something that we have to maintain. So we're achieving growth. We're definitely doing a great job there, and I think we are maintaining quality. That's kind of the challenge. But as we continue to grow into the future, bigger staff, potentially offering different services is something that we're looking into. Because families are enjoying our service, we often get asked to provide other things, which we don't have the capacity to do and just don't have the operations or whatever. So as we grow into the future, we are getting feedback from our parents and people that we support with, this would be a great thing to do. We definitely need that, and we think you guys can play a huge role in that. If we can play a role and we can do it effectively, we'll do it, but we don't want to be doing something just for the sake of it and start offering services just because it increases your bottom line and, it looks good. So if we can do that, we will, and I think we're on our way to do that as well.
Yeah, it's all about like growing in a way that allows you to like maintain that like reputation and credibility. But being able to provide more services down the line will be amazing. And obviously people love your services so much. So it's exciting.
Exciting, yeah, absolutely.
You guys based just in Victoria, or has Buttons expanded across states?
We're just in Victoria now. If you guys want a job and want to launch Buttons in Sydney, we can definitely talk about it. I think we just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing and understand the market here first. We're on our way to doing that. And I think we'll go into other states if we feel like that we've got the right processes and operations to do so, and the right people. So it's definitely within the works, but just want to make sure that we're doing it at the right time.
Awesome. And a nice roundup that we always like to ask our guests is, what piece of advice would you give to someone who wants to start a business or create something of their own?
I'm not in a position to give advice. I don't feel like I don't know. I think we just have fun. We keep it simple. We treat people well. That's kind of held us in good stead. Maybe it's just luck that comes out of it. But make sure that you're speaking to the right people. Don't be attached to your opinions and ideas. Be open to other people giving you feedback. As young people starting businesses, without the professional and worldly experiences, there are sometimes gaps in knowledge. So seek that advice and make sure that the people that you're seeking it from, value, want to be a part of your journey, and are giving you advice that is really sound. Don't get too high and don't get too low as well, because there are inevitably going to be roadblocks and challenges, and there's going to be amazing highs. Just try keep a level head and a balanced approach, and don't let the emotional roller coaster get to you, because it can, and inevitably there's going to be ups and downs, and just kind of realize that it's never as good or it's never as bad as it seems.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much for joining us today, David. It was so nice to hear about the Buttons story.
It was great to chat to you both. Thanks so much for having me. This is my first kind of podcast, so it's been good to get on. Thank you so much.
We're honoured.